I had gotten married young, younger than most. My boyfriend and I had been dating since we were 14, and by the time we reached high school, we were sure we were going to get married. My parents had gotten together young too, and so had my grandparents on both sides. My boyfriend's parents also had gotten together young, so it wasn't a big deal to us that we had gotten together and started our relationship at such a young age. When we were in our second year of high school, Jason had brought up that we should get married. I wasn't in a rush, but at the same time, I knew he was the one. The one thing I was in a rush for was starting a family. My parents had had me when they were 17, and Jason's parents had his older sister when they were 17, and him when they were 19. Anyone we told thought that was so young, but for us, it was just the way our families did things. I like to think of myself as a non-traditional person, but I did have a traditional streak and didn't want to start a family until I was married. I said to Jason that I was ready for marriage and kids at 17. I started to wait. I kept waiting for him to ask me. I get what he was doing. He wanted it to be a surprise. As we had just talked about it, he had to let some time pass so it would surprise me when it happened. The waiting was starting to drive me crazy though. Valentine's Day had arrived, and I love the holiday. I love the thought that couples all over the world were celebrating their love for one another. I always went all out. Last year for Valentine's Day, I had paid to get some boudoir pictures done and framed one and created an album out of the others for Jason. He loved it and told me he looked at them whenever he was feeling down. He made me feel like I was the most beautiful woman in the world. He was good at flattery and had no problem expressing himself or his emotions. That was what I loved most about him. I never had to guess what he was thinking or feeling about me because he always told me. My favorite thing to hear was the story of when he first saw me. He was the son of one of my mom's new friends, and I had gone to her house to pick my mom up one night because, embarrassingly, she had one too many drinks and wanted me to walk her home. It was crazy windy that day. I was trying to collect myself walking up the front path, but gave up. Wind was no friend when it came to looks. I had very long hair at the time that hung halfway down my back. I rang the doorbell, and Jason had answered the door. When he opened the door and invited me in, a huge gust of wind had blown up behind me, and my hair flew up and all around my face just as I was crossing the threshold. I was trying my best to push the thousands of tiny hairs that were stuck to my face out of my face so I could at least see him and he could see me. I saw the humor of the moment and burst out laughing, saying, "What an entrance!" He laughed and predictably said, "That's some wind out there today." Sadly, the attempts of conversation didn't get much better. He called out to his mom that I was there to pick up my mom, but it seemed like we were standing there awkwardly in his front entrance for quite some time. He said, "So, what school do you go to?" It was all basic small talk, but I liked watching him squirm. He was definitely scrounging for some conversation topics. I could have chimed in and helped out, but the sadist in me liked watching him get more and more awkward. When our moms came out, I said, "Very nice to meet you, Jason. I'm sure we'll see each other again." He stammered out that he liked meeting me too, and that maybe we could get together sometime. I still can't believe he asked me out for the first time in front of his mother and mine, who was drunk at the time. I just smiled as I felt too much in the spotlight. The very next day, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered it, and it was Jason. He was obviously very nervous, but managed to blurt out that he had movie tickets to the new Spider-Man and would I like to go. At this point, I thought, why not? I loved Spider-Man. He picked me up that Friday night. Despite his initial awkwardness, he recovered quickly. He was hilarious and was making me laugh so much. We swapped stories about our embarrassing parents and talked about how our moms had become friends. We liked a lot of the same music and movies and had a lot in common. I felt instantly comfortable with him and like I could tell him anything. From that first date, we started to talk and text on the phone all the time. We hung out as much as we could, but went to different junior highs, so nights and weekends were our time to spend together. So we dated and got closer, and by 17, I was patiently waiting for him to propose. One completely average night, we had taken my dog to the off-leash area. I guess looking back, he had seemed a little off, but that's just hindsight. At the time, I didn't know anything was up. We loved the dog park, and I had always talked about how it was my happy place. It does the heart good to see those dogs so happy and carefree. We were walking along admiring the fall colors when he bent down. I hadn't noticed right away and kept walking. When I noticed he wasn't beside me, I turned around to see him kneeling down on one knee. Had it not been for that strange pose, I would have thought he was simply picking up my dog's poop. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny red box. The rest is history, so to speak. We decided to get married right away without telling anyone. Neither of us wanted a wedding, so we headed down to City Hall and tied the knot quietly. Our parents were a little disappointed, but understood. All they said was, "Just don't keep us in the dark when it comes to babies." We laughed and said there was no chance of that. We moved in together and started working on starting a family. I didn't even really care if I finished high school. I thought, if I can't, I'll just finish through correspondence while I'm looking after the baby. 5 months later, after a lot of trying and no signs of being pregnant, we started to worry. Our parents had had us young and gotten pregnant right away. We had foolishly assumed it would be the same for us. We went to a doctor who wanted to test Jason's sperm and run some tests on me too. The results told us that Jason's sperm count was so low, it was likely that if we were to get pregnant, it would take a long time. The doctor explained to us that the conditions would have to be perfect for one of his sperms to make it inside one of my eggs. We tried for over a year and a half before we started to look into our options. We could try adopting, but being so young, our chances weren't the best. We decided instead to go for IVF treatments. Our parents were desperate for grandchildren, so they pitched in to pay for the treatments, which were astronomically expensive. 3 months of treatment later, while tracking my periods closely, I noticed I was late. As much as I wanted to run out right then to get a pregnancy test, I waited a couple of days before I bought one and took it. The result was positive. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to tell Jason when he got home from work. We went in to see our doctor, who was very excited too. She did a test and confirmed that I was approximately 4 weeks pregnant. We raced home to tell our parents, who were elated at the news. We started shopping for all that cutesy baby stuff and assembling a crib. We knew it was a little early for all that stuff, but we were too excited to care. Our next big surprise came when we went for our ultrasound to find out the sex, and were told there were twins in there, twin girls. We were flabbergasted. We went from thinking we wouldn't be able to get pregnant to having twins. So out we went to buy a duplicate of everything we had already bought. My pregnancy was perfect, no complications, and I was feeling great. When I was asked if I wanted to have another ultrasound closer to the due date, I said no, as I didn't see much point. I tell you, looking back, I wish I had gone for that extra ultrasound closer to the date. Right around the time I was pushing and grunting in the delivery room, and the doctor yelled, "Help!" I thought, yeah, more ultrasounds might have been good. The rush of people into the delivery room, not to mention the doctor's response, told me we were about to get some crazy news.